When you wrote the song My Way for Frank Sinatra,
Yeah.
he should have blown you. I mean, that was some
That
song.
is a great
That was
song.
low on my list of what I wanted from Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra had a way of making the world stop, whether he was stepping up to a microphone or stepping into a room. But behind the glamour, the tuxedos, and the standing ovations was a life steeped in whispers of dangerous friendships, political deals, and private battles that no spotlight could hide. Friends feared crossing him, yet millions adored him. And Paul Anka, who gave Sinatra the song that defined his legacy, saw the man behind the music. But what he saw would forever change how the world remembers Sinatra. The song that changed everything. Paul Anka may have given Frank Sinatra the song that transformed his career and cemented his legacy. But in the process, he discovered something about Sinatra that would forever change the way he saw him. But before that happened, Paul Anka was already living a kind of success most teenagers could only dream about. Anka shot to fame in the late 1950s with chart-topping hits like Diana, Lonely Boy, and Put Your Head on My Shoulder. These songs weren't just popular. They became cultural touchstones of the era. Radio stations couldn't get enough of his clean-cut image, catchy melodies, and the kind of wholesome charm that made him a favorite among both teenage fans and their parents. But behind that boy-next-door image was an ambitious and determined songwriter. From a young age, Anka had admired the great vocalists of the earlier generation, especially Frank Sinatra. While Anka was conquering the teen pop charts, Sinatra was operating in a different world entirely, the sophisticated realm of swing, big bands, and adult-oriented ballads. For Anka, the Teenage Idol label was both a blessing and a limitation. He wanted longevity. He wanted to be seen as a serious composer and lyricist, not just a heartthrob for the youth market. And if there was one artist he dreamed of writing for, it was Frank Sinatra. The opportunity came in an unexpected way. In the late 1960s, Anka heard a French song titled Comme d'habitude, composed by Jacques Rivaux with lyrics by Claude François and Gilles Thibault. The song's title translates to As Usual, and its mood was wistful, a reflection on the monotony and emotional distance in a failing relationship. While the melody caught Anka's ear, it was the potential for something greater that struck him. He immediately began thinking about how the tune could be transformed for an English-speaking audience. The breakthrough moment happened when Anka heard that Sinatra was considering retirement. By 1968, Sinatra had been in the music business for decades, and though he remained a giant in the industry, there were whispers that he was ready to step away from performing. Anka, who had by then established himself as both a singer and a songwriter, knew instantly that Comme d'habitude could be reimagined into something deeply personal for Sinatra, a kind of musical farewell. Determined to seize the opportunity, Anka secured the rights to adapt the French song. He didn't just translate it, he completely rewrote it, tailoring every line to fit Sinatra's personality, career, and public image. Anka once recalled that he wanted the song to sound as though Sinatra himself were speaking directly to his audience, summing up his life and career with honesty and pride. He wrote the lyrics in a single night in New York City. Sitting alone, he pictured Sinatra in the recording studio, delivering each line with that distinctive mix of bravado and vulnerability. Lines like, "I did it my way," weren't random. They were carefully crafted to match Sinatra's defiant independence and his reputation for living life on his own terms. Anka avoided making it too sentimental or self-pitying. Instead, he gave it the tone of a final statement from a man who had lived fully and unapologetically. When Anka presented the song to Sinatra, it was an immediate fit. In December 1968, Sinatra recorded My Way, and it was released in early 1969. Although it wasn't an instant #1 hit in the United States, it peaked at number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100. For Sinatra's fans, My Way was a declaration. It captured the essence of who he was, a man who navigated the highs and lows of life with style, confidence, and a refusal to conform. Ironically, the song that Anka had intended as Sinatra's swan song ended up postponing his retirement. The massive cultural impact of My Way reinvigorated Sinatra's career, keeping him in the public eye and on the stage for years to come. It became the song most closely associated with him, closing his concerts and cementing his image as the ultimate individualist in music. The reach of My Way went far beyond Sinatra himself. Over the decades, the song has been covered by hundreds of artists, each bringing their own interpretation. It has appeared in films, television shows, and countless tribute performances, becoming a global anthem for self-determination. In countries like the UK, it holds records for its longevity on the charts, and in places like the Philippines, it's even sparked debate for its controversial popularity in karaoke bars. But for Paul Anka, the success of My Way was more than just another songwriting credit. It was a turning point that elevated him from teen idol to respected composer in the adult contemporary world. While his own singing career continued, his ability to write a song that would define another artist's legacy set him apart. The partnership between Anka's words and Sinatra's voice created something rare in music history. A song so intertwined with its performer that it's almost impossible to separate the two. And in the years surrounding this moment, Paul Anka made an entrance into an elite circle of entertainers where Frank Sinatra reigned supreme. They were called the Rat Pack, and it was in this circle that Anka got to see the real Sinatra. Inside the Rat Pack, by the time My Way made its mark, Paul Anka had become a part of Sinatra's inner circle, the Rat Pack, one of the most glamorous, powerful, and talked-about groups in entertainment history. The Rat Pack wasn't an official band or formal organization. It was just a gathering of larger-than-life personalities whose combined charisma could command the stage, screen, and even political circles. The core members were Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford. Each brought something different to the mix. Sinatra had the unmatched voice and leadership. Martin exuded effortless charm and comedic timing. Davis was the all-around entertainer with a talent for song, dance, and impressions. Bishop handled much of the behind-the-scenes coordination and humor. And Lawford added a Hollywood connection and, more importantly, a direct link to political royalty through his marriage to Patricia Kennedy, sister of then-Senator John F. Kennedy. Their public image was pure 1960s cool, complete with the tailored suits, cocktail glasses in hand, and a confident swagger that made audiences feel lucky just to watch them. They dominated Las Vegas with legendary shows at the Sands Hotel, where the atmosphere was part performance, part inside joke, and part wild party. On stage, they'd tease each other mercilessly, trade songs, and break into unscripted bits that kept audiences on their toes. The chemistry was undeniable, and the sense of fun seemed genuine. But the Rat Pack's influence extended far beyond the showroom lights. They were box office draws in Hollywood, starring together in films like Ocean's 11, which became a cultural symbol of their style. They also wielded serious political influence. Sinatra in particular was reportedly a close friend of John F. Kennedy, and the Rat Pack used their fame to campaign for him during the 1960 presidential election. Their events could draw massive crowds, and their endorsements carried weight with voters. As a matter of fact, in the early 60s, being seen with the Rat Pack wasn't just a mark of social prestige. It could be a political advantage. Paul Anka's entry into this exclusive group wasn't accidental. His musical success had already earned him respect in the industry, but My Way and his growing personal friendship with Sinatra gave him something this circle didn't just throw around: trust. Sinatra treated him as the kid of the group, a younger protege who could observe, learn, and when the timing was right, join in the banter. From the inside, Anka saw a side of the Rat Pack that audiences never did. There were late-night parties where the air was thick with smoke, laughter, and the sound of clinking glasses. The group's appetite for indulgence was legendary. Womanizing, heavy drinking, and high-stakes gambling were all part of the lifestyle. Anka also witnessed the complexity of their relationships. The camaraderie was real, but so were the rivalries and moments of tension. Each man had his own career, ego, and ambitions, and balancing that mix wasn't always easy. Dean Martin, for example, often played the role of the laid-back joker, but he also carefully managed his public image and work commitments. Sammy Davis Jr. faced the pressures of breaking racial barriers in show business, even as he stood shoulder to shoulder with some of the most influential entertainers of the time. And Sinatra himself, at the center of it all, could be fiercely loyal one moment and unapproachable the next. There were also the connections that operated in the shadows. The Rat Pack's ties to the mafia were an open secret in certain circles. Las Vegas in the Juneteenth 60s was still heavily influenced by organized crime, and having the right friendships could make or break a performer's success there. For Anka, who was still carving out his place in the industry, he quickly learned how entertainment, politics, and power could blend in ways that were as risky as they were rewarding. Political ties were another defining feature of the group's influence. Peter Lawford's Kennedy connection meant the Rat Pack wasn't just rubbing shoulders with Hollywood stars and mob bosses, they were dining with presidents and shaping public perception during one of the most turbulent decades in American history. Anka saw how quickly alliances could shift, especially when personal loyalty clashed with political realities. Being inside the Rat Pack was like holding a backstage pass to a world where rules were optional, influence was currency, and reputations could change overnight. The glamour was intoxicating, but the dysfunction was impossible to ignore. Sinatra could command a room like no one else, but there was a darker side to him that could create friction. Anka quickly learned that the Rat Pack wasn't just a group of entertainers having a good time. It was a power structure with Sinatra as its driving force. And inside that structure, Anka began to see the other side of his idol, a man whose charisma masked a more complicated and at times controversial nature. Frank Sinatra's controversial nature. Frank Sinatra's voice could fill a concert hall with warmth and charm, but away from the microphone, his life was often surrounded by shadows. The man who sang My Way with conviction and confidence lived a life that was far more complicated than the image his fans adored. Behind the tuxedos, stage lights, and Rat Pack glamour was a figure whose name repeatedly surfaced in FBI files, whispered mob rumors, and the occasional courtroom battle. For Paul Anka, who saw Sinatra both on stage and behind closed doors, this was the side of the legend that revealed just how calculated and sometimes dangerous the business of fame could be. One of the longest-running rumors about Sinatra was his alleged connection to some of the most notorious figures in organized crime. Names like Lucky Luciano, Sam Giancana, and Bugsy Siegel appeared often in media reports and government investigations that tried to map the entertainer's network of friends and associates. While Sinatra always denied any involvement with illegal activity, the rumors persisted because of the company he was known to keep, especially in Las Vegas and other mob-influenced entertainment hubs. In 1946, these whispers gained new momentum when Sinatra was reported to have attended the infamous Havana Conference, a gathering of major mafia figures in Cuba, organized by Lucky Luciano. This meeting wasn't a casual dinner. It was a strategic summit where organized crime leaders discussed operations, territories, and future business ventures. For law enforcement, Sinatra's alleged presence there was more than a coincidence. It was a red flag. The FBI began keeping a close watch on Sinatra, and that surveillance would continue for several decades. Thousands of pages of reports documented his movements, his friendships, and even his business ventures. One of the more persistent allegations was that Sinatra acted as a mediator for mob bosses and politicians. Some rumors claimed that he helped John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign by using mob-backed union votes in key states. However, this claim has never been proven, but it stuck to Sinatra's public narrative for decades. There was also controversy surrounding his absence from military service during World War II. Officially, Sinatra was exempted due to a punctured eardrum and psychological issues noted in his medical evaluation. But years later, some rumors claimed he had paid $40,000 to avoid the draft, an accusation he fiercely denied. The official record supported the medical exemption, yet the shadow of suspicion was difficult to shake. Sinatra's volatility also played out in public confrontations. He was accused on multiple occasions of engaging in physical altercations with journalists, photographers, and even his own publicists when stories or photographs didn't meet his approval. One of the most infamous incidents came in 1973 when he publicly confronted Washington Post journalist Maxine Cheshire after she had written a critical piece about him. The clash was heated and cemented Sinatra's reputation for having a short fuse when challenged. His relationships with political figures also brought both prestige and embarrassment. For instance, Sinatra was a vocal supporter of John F. Kennedy and used his connections to help organize star-studded campaign events. However, in 1962, after the election, JFK abruptly distanced himself from Sinatra. The reason, according to numerous reports, was the president's advisor's warning about Sinatra's alleged mob ties, especially his friendship with Sam Giancana. The snub was humiliating for Sinatra, who had even renovated his home to accommodate a planned presidential visit, only for Kennedy to stay with Bing Crosby instead. Further complicating matters was the allegation that Sinatra had facilitated Kennedy's affair with Judith Exner, a woman who was later linked romantically to Giancana. Whether or not the details were accurate, the perception was damaging. Sinatra's business dealings in Nevada also came under scrutiny. In 1963, his gaming license was revoked after Giancana was spotted at the Cal Neva Lodge, a casino resort Sinatra partly owned. The Nevada Gaming Control Board didn't tolerate visible mob associations, and Sinatra was forced to divest from both the Cal Neva Lodge and his interests in the Sands Hotel. These losses weren't just financial, they were personal blows to a man who had made Las Vegas a central part of his empire. Over the years, Sinatra also fought legal battles to protect his image. In 1983, he sued biographer Kitty Kelly over her unauthorized book, His Way, which painted an unflattering portrait based on interviews with former associates and employees. Sinatra dismissed the book as sensationalist, but the lawsuit became another headline in a career where his private life often spilled into the public domain. He also filed suits against developers and journalists who, in his view, misrepresented his character or exploited his name. Perhaps one of the more curious episodes came when Sinatra reportedly offered to become an FBI informant, a move that would have been remarkable given the allegations about his underworld connections. According to accounts, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover declined the offer, leaving unanswered questions about Sinatra's motivations and what he might have been willing to share. Through all of this, Sinatra maintained a carefully curated public persona. On stage and in interviews, he was the embodiment of sophistication, class, and wit. Offstage, those who knew him best saw the volatility, the grudges, and the sharp edges that could surface in an instant. This duality was part of what made him such a compelling figure. He was both the consummate entertainer and a man who navigated a minefield of alliances, rumors, and personal battles. For Paul Anka, these revelations and experiences shaped his understanding of Sinatra. The mentor he admired was undeniably a man of talent and influence, but also someone who lived in a world where friendships could be strategic, loyalties could be tested, and reputations could change with a single photograph or whispered conversation. But controversy was only one side of Frank Sinatra's story. Behind the power plays, the political connections, and the mob rumors was a man wrestling with private battles and struggles that, at times, threatened to undo everything he had built. Frank's struggles in passing. For all the glamour and bravado that Frank Sinatra projected on stage, his life away from the spotlight was often marked by turbulence. Beneath the charm and swagger was a man who wrestled with deep emotional struggles, some of which stayed hidden from the public for years. These private battles, combined with personal losses and physical decline, revealed a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with his public image as the confident, untouchable chairman of the board. One of Sinatra's most persistent challenges was his lifelong battle with depression. Friends and colleagues described periods where his mood would shift dramatically. He would experience high-energy bursts of charisma followed by stretches of quiet, brooding withdrawal, and this emotional complexity was perhaps best captured in his music. Albums like In the Wee Small Hours didn't just showcase Sinatra's vocal range. They became some of the first concept albums in popular music to focus almost entirely on loneliness, heartache, and regret. The haunting arrangements and understated delivery reflected something deeply personal, a window into the melancholic side of the man who could command a room with a single smile. His depression was particularly acute during his tumultuous marriage to actress Ava Gardner, which lasted from 1951 to 1954. Their relationship was passionate but volatile, marked by intense arguments, separations, and reconciliations. Multiple accounts from insiders suggested that Sinatra even made drastic decisions that almost cost him everything during this period because he was overwhelmed by the emotional roller coaster of their union. While he would later speak fondly of Gardner, calling her the love of his life, the reality was that their marriage was as destructive as it was intoxicating. Sinatra's personal life was further complicated by a pattern of emotional instability and infidelity. Over the course of his life, he married 4 times, first to Nancy Barbato, then to Ava Gardner, later to Mia Farrow, and finally to Barbara Marx. Each marriage brought its own challenges, but none escaped the impact of Sinatra's demanding career, high-profile lifestyle, and sometimes volatile temperament. His final marriage to Barbara Marx in 1976 sparked tensions within his family, particularly with his daughter Nancy Sinatra, who openly disapproved of the union. Tragedy also played a significant role in shaping Sinatra's later years. In January 1977, his mother, Natalie Dolly Sinatra, died in a plane crash while on her way to see him perform in Las Vegas. Dolly had been a strong and influential figure in Frank's life, outspoken, politically active, and fiercely supportive of her son's career. Her sudden death was a devastating blow, and those close to him said he was deeply affected by the loss. Another traumatic event had occurred much earlier, in 1963, when his son Frank was kidnapped in Lake Tahoe. The ordeal lasted several days, during which Sinatra paid a ransom of $240,000 to secure his son's release. Although Frank was safely returned, the incident left a lasting scar on the family. Sinatra himself was shaken, and for years afterward, he reportedly carried a roll of dimes with him wherever he went, a habit developed from the kidnapping when he had been forced to use payphones to communicate with the kidnappers. Sinatra's professional life wasn't immune to setbacks either. While he enjoyed immense success, there were moments when his creative ventures failed to connect with audiences. One of the most notable examples was the concept album Watertown, an ambitious project telling the story of a man whose wife leaves him. Despite critical praise for its emotional depth, the album was a commercial failure, selling poorly and leaving Sinatra disappointed. By the mid-1980s, Sinatra's health began to show signs of strain. In 1986, he collapsed on stage in Atlantic City due to diverticulitis, a painful condition affecting the digestive tract. Although he recovered and returned to performing, it was a reminder that even he was not immune to the physical toll of decades on the road. The 1990s brought further decline, from memory loss to fatigue and increasing frailty. For an artist who had built his career on control of his voice, his timing, and his image, these changes were particularly difficult. In 1994, while performing in Richmond, Virginia, Sinatra fainted on stage. The incident was widely reported and for many fans symbolized the fading of an era. Though he continued to make public appearances afterward, the vigor and precision that had once defined his performances were no longer the same. As the 1990s progressed, his public appearances became rarer, and he was increasingly shielded from the press. Friends and family later revealed that his memory problems were worsening, and his once sharp wit was dulled by illness and age. On May 14, 1998, Frank Sinatra died at the age of 82 after suffering a heart attack in Los Angeles. The official cause was a heart attack, but it came after years of declining health. His passing marked the end of one of the most storied careers in entertainment history. Tributes poured in from around the world, honoring not only his music but also his impact on film, culture, and the American identity. His funeral, held at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills, was attended by a mix of Hollywood legends, political figures, and personal friends. Gregory Peck delivered a moving eulogy, and his coffin was accompanied by floral arrangements spelling out "the best," a nod to one of his most beloved songs, "The Best Is Yet to Come." For Paul Anka, Sinatra's struggles and eventual passing were deeply personal moments. He had seen Sinatra at his highest points, commanding stages in Las Vegas, shaping the Rat Pack's image, and recording some of the most enduring music of the 20th century. But he had also seen the cracks in the armor, the private despair, the personal losses, and the toll of a life lived constantly in the public eye. And when Paul Anka finally reflected on his years with Frank, on the music they shared, the controversies they weathered, and the man behind the legend, his thoughts revealed just how complicated and unforgettable their bond had been. Anka's thoughts on Sinatra. For Paul Anka, Frank Sinatra was never just another performer. He was the benchmark by which all others were measured. In interviews over the years, Anka has consistently called Sinatra the greatest performer of all time, a title he doesn't offer lightly. To Anka, Sinatra's ability to hold an audience, command a room, and deliver a song with absolute conviction was unmatched. He understood that Sinatra's gift wasn't just in the notes he sang, but in the way he made every lyric feel lived in, personal, and real. Anka admired not only Sinatra's technical mastery, but also his cultural influence. Sinatra was more than a singer. He was an icon whose style, mannerisms, and public persona helped define an era. In the mid-20th century, he represented a certain ideal of sophistication and confidence, an image that appealed to fans from the concert hall to the boardroom. Whether standing under the bright lights of Las Vegas or recording in the studio, Sinatra projected an unshakable presence that made him a lasting figure in American entertainment. But Anka never ignored the other side of Sinatra's personality. He openly acknowledged that Sinatra could be volatile, capable of sudden flashes of anger, unyielding in his expectations, and fiercely controlling when it came to his work and his relationships. People who crossed him rarely got a second chance. There was a fear factor that surrounded Sinatra even among his friends and collaborators. In an interview, Anka once said, "When Sinatra says we're going to dinner, you drop everything and you go to dinner." Anka saw this side often enough to know it was as much a part of Sinatra's makeup as his legendary charm. To many, what made their relationship work was the fact that Anka was different. He was diplomatic where Sinatra was forceful and strategic where Sinatra relied on instinct. Anka had entered the industry young and learned early how to navigate fame without letting it consume him. He valued emotional balance and long-term relationships, preferring to avoid unnecessary conflicts. This difference in temperament meant that Anka could survive and even thrive within Sinatra's inner circle without becoming another casualty of his temper. Anka also understood how to manage Sinatra's moods and expectations. He knew when to push back and when to step aside, when to engage in banter and when to keep quiet. That emotional intelligence kept the bond between them strong, even during tense moments. Where others might have been intimidated, Anka approached Sinatra with a mix of respect and self-assurance, qualities Sinatra seemed to value. Anka saw Sinatra not as a flawless idol, but as a complete human being who was brilliant and flawed, generous and demanding, and inspiring and intimidating all at once. Their connection was built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of what it meant to live in the unforgiving world of show business. And though Anka built his own remarkable career, he never forgot the man who sang My Way, and in doing so, gave both of them a permanent place in music history. Do you think Paul Anka got enough credit for writing My Way? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.